Good morning, everybody. Welcome along to our Access Pay and Bill Automation webinar. We're in tough times right now, as you all know. So we are here to help where we can, and this is perhaps the first step in doing that. Is looking at some of the automation tools that we have built around our Pay and Bill product. What I want to do first is just give you a little bit of an outline of some of the technology we also have that complements that. By moving on to the next slide. So the key area we're talking about today is automation, but it's worth just noting that one of the things that we really talk to recruiters about nowadays is that whole end-to-end process within their recruitment business. So we have an entire suite of application that serves an entire business process within recruitment that starts with attracting and reaching out to candidates via our Volcanic platform, which is brilliant for brand representation and getting a candidate attraction in place. Then we have our CRM application, Access Recruitment CRM, which is your whole placement, candidate management, client management tool. Our Access Screening tool, which is all about right to work, screening of individuals, DBS checking, just doing that whole compliance process, through into then Pay and Bill, which is a product that you'll be very familiar with, Access Pay and Bill application, which is used to pay about 400,000 workers per annum in the UK. Then that pushes through then into finance and accounts. So that's the entire solution that we can now offer within the business. And how we do that is via technology we have called Workspace, which if I drop onto the next slide, you'll see a little bit more about that. But that gives us the ability to single sign on to our applications, brings all of those different tools into a single source of data for you, which just helps you collaborate better as a business. So if you imagine from any particular viewpoint, I can see CRM data, I can see screening data, I can see Pay and Bill data, all from one user experience, which is really quite powerful. So it gives you that integrated business suite for a recruitment organization. As we said, though, we're focusing principally today on the automation side of things. So when we start talking about automation and looking at automation, we'll just drop onto the next slide. We'll just give you some more detail around that. Is that what we're trying to enable our recruiters to do is to process faster within their organization. And what we mean by that is to really just be processing continuously. So instead of having batch type jobs that we often do within the Pay and Bill environment, where we're waiting for timesheets to come in, then we run timesheets, then we run payroll, then we run billing, we basically set up processes that allow us to do that continuously, effectively via a calculation method that we call event driven, which we'll come on and look at in a little bit more in a moment. But if you think about this being a 24/7 Pay and Bill team running on your system, that's what automation gives you. It's just that continuous processing engine of, as long as you keep feeding it timesheets, it will just keep processing them in any way that you want to do. And we'll give you some really good examples of that in a moment. What this gives you the ability to do is really think about how you structure your Pay and Bill department, because previously we were structured on getting data in perhaps on a Monday, building up data on a Tuesday, through to a Wednesday where you've got a big hump of activity to process timesheets, process payroll, process billing. But actually we're going to smooth out that curve completely and just literally process continuously as data arrives at us. This enables us to bill quicker, to pay at will, and have real time information at our fingertips. Just to give you a bit of a process flow, if I just drop on to the next slide, you'll see what we're effectively doing here is on the screen right now is a perhaps an end-to-end process within our Pay and Bill environment, where you can effectively see timesheets coming in that could come in any sort of ways into our hopper right at the beginning of the process. And the first thing we do is we just validate those timesheets, standard process that we go through in Pay and Bill processing right now. That, as it currently does, puts things into a good pile or a bad pile. Bad pile means it needs some adjustments, some error fixing, just some data management basically, or a good pile, which means it's validated and it's ready to pay and bill. What we've basically got is an automation process that underlines all of this, that keeps that process running continuously without anyone having to touch anything. So we can get validated timesheets and we can process them really quickly through payroll if we want to. We can process them immediately through billing if we want to. So if you can imagine a situation where you've got, let's say from a billing perspective, you've got a client that you just want to bill timesheets as they come in. You could bring a timesheet in on a Monday morning at 9 o'clock. By 9:05, that timesheet is fully validated, checked, it's in the good pile, and if that client is set up with immediate billing and e-billing, it will literally go out that door and be billed to the client probably by about 9:10 without anyone touching anything. So really, really powerful tool in terms of being able to just change the way you operate within your processes. The key thing that an agency will need to do is just to ensure really good quality data at the front of the process. And what we've enabled is new ways of checking and fixing data really quickly, so you can put it back in the top of the hopper, so then it runs back through the process again, through the automation kind of loop. When we talk about automation, we can go all the way through from timesheet or data import all the way through to pay, bill, finance extracts, outputs to HMRC. But we anticipate that businesses will just build up their cadence of automation as they go through time. They will start with importing, validating, perhaps they move on to billing. And as they get more and more confident, they'll just turn on more and more automation tools within the system. And it doesn't require us to do that. It's an end user tool to do that as well, which is really quite important. Just dropping onto my last slide, different types of ways of doing automation is things like scheduling. So I can schedule things to happen. So if you're a business that wants to actually run things overnight, you can just literally schedule routines to happen, and they will happen when you decide them to do that. Or we can have what's called event-driven. So that's when something is finished, it then passes on the data to something else. So a great example is I brought something in from the web holding area in Access Pay and Bill. As soon as that's done, it drops it across to batch timesheet validation. Then that kicks that process off. So when an event is invoked, it completes, and then it passes data on to the next stage in the process. You can then mix and match these. So you can create a load of events that happen at a certain time. So you can schedule events. So we're going to move on now to the actual demonstration. We're going to show you a live process now of bringing data into the application, putting data into the web holding, from the web holding area into the timesheet validation process, and then ultimately producing a pay and bill. And Cara, my colleague from the pre-sales team, will be leading that side of the presentation. So Cara, if you're free now, we'll just jump straight onto the software.
Excellent, thank you, Jason. Okay, so if I just minimize my presentation there, where I'm going to start this morning is within our Access workspace. So like Jason said, and I think it was probably around the third slide there, this is where we're pushing a lot of our development at the moment. So what I've done is I've created a dashboard within my Access workspace. So this is a dashboard that contains different apps that have been created for the pay and bill system. So what I like to say is, or a phrase I use a lot is a product on a page. So what this is doing is actually drilling into the system or the application itself and actually showing me what currently is running. So these top 3 apps here, so our pay and bill monitoring, I've duplicated this. I've set one to progress, and we'll see some progress running through that in a moment. I've set one to completed, so I can actually see what has completed. And then I've set one to errors, so it actually then tells me where my errors are and in what tasks. So this at the top here is all in relation to our automation module. So currently what this is showing is we have generate invoices, a payroll journal, we have print invoices, we have a main calc, a batch timesheet validation. All of these tasks have been run within the pay and bill system without me actually doing anything at all. What we then have in addition to this are our client and worker hubs. So again, 2 apps that are linked directly to probably what we're going to start to see more as the back-end application. So where we're going to go to probably do things like our setup, our configuration, potentially some forms of exception handling, but we're going to start to use this more as our front end and where we go to on a day-to-day basis. Or it could be that we want something like this on a big screen in our payroll office, so anyone at any point knows where we're at within that process. But if I just go into our client and work hubs here, what it will allow us to do is quickly and easily search for a client. It will bring up their basic details. It will show me any invoicing. If I drill into that, it will then actually surface that invoice as it would have been for the client. along with any timesheets or assignments that could be linked back to that client. Again, similar with our worker hub, if I search for an employee or a worker, I would be able to see their basic details, their pay slips, any form of holidays. This is something that the development team are currently working on at the moment. So I can quickly and easily see what is available, how much has been accrued, how much has been taken, without having to go into some of the screens that we generally would within Pay and Bill at the moment. Again, this would then action their timesheets and assignments. So if we go into this one here and I click on the little information, this will show me Jake Wilson's timesheet for this period. What you can also do, so the power of Access Workspace, is actually to build different dashboards for different team members. So it could be that actually these two applications, so these two apps here, potentially be quite beneficial to maybe a recruitment consultant. So you would be able to add and mix and match those apps dependent on who's working with certain products. On the right hand side here, I have some of our insights that are linked to our analytics product. So this is actually linked to our analytics product. However, I've been speaking with our development team and they're working on similar things that we can add as an app to our dashboards in the same way. So how many timesheets have we processed today? How many have we paid? How many have we billed? And what would that look like as a GP report? However, what I'm going to do is I'm now going to jump into maybe some of the screens that you're more familiar with, and that would be those within Pay and Bill. So with the automation module, it is a bolt-on module, and down here I will now have an automation dropdown. So within that, if I go straight into my scheduler control panel, I will see some of these what we would call streams that I have created. Within those streams, I then have specific tasks. So those streams could be maybe set out by division, by client, by brand, or it could be set out to be certain processes that you would normally group together on a weekly basis. So your front office data coming in, any timesheet data, be that from FTI, it could be portals, anything like that. Or we could then start to look at the following processes after we have the timesheet data in. So grouping tasks linked to validation, payroll, pay slips, and then actually looking to maybe split down our billing. Otherwise, we could maybe look to actually build a stream that would group those tasks together. What I'll do is if I go into our top one here, so this is a very simplistic start to finish. So importing timesheets through to calculating, invoicing, pay slips, and then some reporting. And that's what we'll run through the system today. However, if we focus on more of what Jason was speaking about of the when can we run these tasks, how can we set them to be event driven, and how can we actually mix and match and make sure that those tasks and when they're running works for us as a business. Apologies, folks, I seem to be having a little bit of a connection issue there. We're back on. So if we have a look at this, I've set these tasks to be daily on a Tuesday to Wednesday and to start running at 11 AM. However, as Jason was saying, what we want to potentially push towards is rather than have a high peak on a Wednesday and then a sort of a low each side and have that busy point on a Wednesday trying to get everything done and checked, actually start feeding in the data in smaller batches. So actually drip feed the data into Pay and Bill. It will then mean that we can run things like our batch timesheet validation, our main calc, any form of pay slip. We could look to introduce immediate billing more frequently. So here I could say on a Tuesday and Wednesday between 11 and midnight, run these tasks every 60 minutes, or it could be 30 minutes, it could be 3 hours. So what it will do is it will look at the folder where my import timesheet files parameters are set to, and it will pull that data in. So if you have files, so import timesheets for flexible timesheet import coming into a folder, it will start to look at those files. It will bring those files in if there's new data. It will start to run it through this process. Obviously, I'm not saying that you would all want to run each of these tasks in line with each other. You might want to look at splitting them out. However, this is just to give you a bit of an idea. You also have the ability to select when you are running these. So like I said, it could be 7 days a week, 3 days a week, 2 days a week. You've also got the ability to disable a stream or a process if you do not believe the data is correct in that. However, what we're trying to do by running and automating these tasks is allow you purely to focus on the exception handling. So you're not actually going in and doing the legwork around the system. So selecting those files, you're not going in and selecting or clicking around and going through your web holding and bringing that data in. You're allowing the system to do that for you. You're actually saying automation, pull in my files, run my batch timesheet validation, print my pay slips and invoice without me actually having to do a thing. All you're then dealing with is that bad pile Jason was speaking about earlier, that the hopper processes that you will then be correcting, and it will go back into the top of that hopper and automation will feed that through again. So if we look at some of our parameters, so what the development team have done is they haven't done anything too wild. They have stuck with the screens that you would be used to using on a daily or weekly basis. So anything that you see here under our descriptions and our functions have the same parameters or screens that you would see when you're actually running these tasks manually. So our import timesheet files, it could be our main calculation. It could be our parameters set against our reports. You still have full control of what you want to run and when you want to run it. You also have the ability to create more than one task in succession of each other. So if I wanted, I could actually create 3 batch timesheet validations in a row, all with different parameters. Or I could potentially create 5 different gross profit reports. And then those gross profit report parameters, I could then have a different selection criteria each time. What I know is I don't then have to go in and manually do this. It will look at each selection criteria from the parameters of that task and put it into the folder that I've specified it to. So things like this, you can actually then start to look at potentially running out of hours. So it could be that you want your reports to be in a folder. So when you come in at 8:30 on a Wednesday morning, they're already there and you can look to check them. Or it could be that you want to run your main calculation overnight or certain tasks like a batch timesheet validation. So it's not saying that we're going to completely automate everything from day one. Like Jason said, we're probably going to cascade it in and say, okay, what are you comfortable with starting with? But the functionality and the main core tasks are there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to execute this task here. So what that's going to do, it's going to look at a FTI, so quite a basic one. There's probably around 70 records on there with their pay and bill rate. It's going to look at this file, bring that in, and then it's going to start to process it through all of these different tasks here. I know it has been slightly slow this morning when I was testing earlier. I think a lot of people are sending a lot of emails at the moment where they're not all in offices. But what I would like to see is then if I delete these ones out here, some new pay slips coming in for my worker, Jake Wilson, and then an invoice coming in for my client, who is Michael Jensen. Okay, so if I execute my task here, and if I minimize this screen back down and go back into our Access workspace, what I can then see is that import timesheet file. So that's how we'd like, or how I'd look or think the screens would be used and the apps would be used potentially within a payroll team, payroll office. So the progress on the left through to the completed and then to the errors. At the moment, any errors are dealt with from within pay and bills. So I'll go into our automation inquiry in a moment. What we'd like to see in the future is giving you the opportunity to actually access the error from workspace. So what you're seeing on screen, potentially maybe via a hyperlink or something in here, then you can select that. You can then go into the application. You can exception handle from workspace. So as we can see, it's going through to our main calculation and it's starting to then just work through these tasks. That will tell me that they've completed when they've started and when they've ended. So we can see my main calculations going through 33 records at the moment, and so on and so forth, right through to our payslip print. So if I go back into pay and bill, and if I come out of our automation scheduler, if I go back in, I'll just show you what the automation inquiry currently looks like. Okay, so what this is showing me is if there have been any errors with any of the tasks that I've just run. So this morning I had a couple of errors and it was to do with an update on the version. Then these are the timesheet imports that I've run another one through at 10:42, and then 11:19 is the one that I've just started within my automation workflow. So what this is saying is it's not red, it's not that it hasn't gone in, but there could potentially be some errors. So there's a warning there to say, please view the details. So what I can see is batch 25255, there have been some issues with, and from there I would then be able to go into my timesheet inquiry and actually see what the issues were. So screens that you're all familiar with. If there was an issue with batch timesheet validation, it would be the same, or anything to do with the reporting. Again, this would come up in our automation inquiry. So when we've been speaking to clients, some have said, do we need to use Workspace? Obviously, we'd love you to use Workspace. We think it's really nice and visual. You'll have your analytics, you'll have your viewpoints be exactly where you are in your process when no one's actually going in and running these processes manually. Automation is taking care of that for you. But what you would also be able to do is monitor the automation inquiry. So if you didn't want to use Workspace, there is the option for you to have this screen visible for the team, and they can then just use this. They can see if there's any errors, they can actually go in, they can resolve them, and then the information then can be processed back through automation automatically. So if we come back out and I have a look, so what I can see is it went right through to my payroll journal. However, it seems like there was an issue with my export payroll costing. So then that's where we could then start to see straight away what's been successful and what's not, and then we can go in and remedy or rectify anything. So if I go back into my demo, from what I can see, so 11:21, I have a pay slip sitting waiting for me for Jake Wilson, and then I also have an invoice sitting there waiting for me for Michael Jensen, along with any details that are set up against that client's record. So what we can see there is that, firstly, we have time saved. The stream that I've just processed through automation, I've worked out that manually that could be around probably 60 to 70 clicks around the system, depending on how much that potentially you hold or comes in via your web holding. We're also looking at that is improved accuracy. So where there is no form of human interaction, we're all humans, sometimes people can click the wrong things, select the wrong things. It means that there is one way of doing it. So when we spoke to a client a couple of weeks ago about this, she said, well, I know that I do reporting one way, another person in my team does it this way. Not that any of it is incorrect. However, we all do it quite differently. So this would mean one way of doing everything. Maybe then just allowing an admin access to potentially alter streams, change streams, set up some parameters, and maybe disable them as well if needed. So hopefully we're reducing the risk there. This also really probably shows that how quickly the billing can actually go out. So if you did want to look at potentially setting some clients to immediate billing, then we started the automation. The timesheet import went in at 11:19. We have an invoice that's come out at 11:22. So it can actually be that quick. And then hopefully that will just mean your team with growth will either be able to handle that without bringing anyone else in, or they can actually get back to doing their day jobs. A lot of the time we speak to people and they say, okay, we've got two people who are constantly sitting there checking or manipulating data. Hopefully we're stepping away from that with automation. So hopefully that's given you a sort of quite a high level insight into what automation can do and the sort of business transformation that we're looking at. But I'll hand you back over to Jason and potentially see if we
Great, thanks, Cara.
any
Perfect.
questions.
So if you guys have got any questions, you can post them up online. But I think the important thing to say there is that's quite a big step forward from where the pay and bill platform has always been. And if you can imagine that process that Cara executed there, just looping and kind of running continuously and just continuously looking for new data and just running through without anyone touching anything. It's like having a little pay and bill agent sitting on your server, continuously processing 24/7. And you can also create different processes for different brands. As if you're a multi-branded business, you have different ways of doing things, then you could create a process that suits that brand. And some clients will take data that goes all the way through really easily, and they have a straightforward invoicing process perhaps. Others of your clients will need you to stop the process, do something with the invoice and then kick it on again, but it really does give you that flexibility. What I'd also say is that if there's genuine interest here from anyone online, then do pick up with your account manager or drop through some questions to us. But what we generally tend to do is we scope these, and we have a way of remotely scoping them as well. So in the current crisis situation we're in, we're all sitting at home doing this and watching this, it doesn't mean that we have to stop what we're doing, because we can scope this remotely and we can get projects ready for when we can actually deliver this remotely as well. So we can be doing projects whilst we're still in this this crisis situation, which could be good because it will help us automate some of the processes we have to think about. But thank you for your time. If you've got any questions, please do come back to us, and we will follow up with you immediately. All right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.